Hi, and welcome to Lessons on Demand. My name is Scott Schilling, and I'll be your trainer for this session. Now, today we're going to talk about a very important topic. This one, you need to have a pad of paper, pen or a pencil, and get ready to take a ton of notes. Today's session is on the 11 deadly fears. Now you go, what? 11 deadly fears? Yep, 11 deadly fears that will absolutely kill your success in the selling or presentation business. Now, what you'll find interesting about this, I think, is that 8 of the fears are about your prospects and your customers, but 3 of them are for you. So again, this is going to be an extremely important lesson. A lot of information here, so make sure that you're taking notes, you're thinking about this information critically as we go along. If you have to stop the lesson and think about it or write some things down, go right ahead and do that. Now, today we're going to be looking at fear. And fear is just another conditioned response. Just like learning to present or the selling environment is a conditioned response, well, fear is a conditioned response. And we're going to discuss where it comes from and the foundation of it all and a variety of different things as we go along here. Again, 8 of these fears are for your prospects, and potentially 3 are for you. Now you're sitting there, wait a second, Scott, how are you telling me that you can predict potentially my fears? Well, because you're in a sales business where there is no security, there's risk involved, and it tends to drum these things up. And not only does it happen to your prospects or customers, but it could happen to you as well. So quite frankly, what we need to do is first learn to recognize these fears. We can't address anything. Remember, growth equals awareness plus inspired action. Until you have this new awareness that these fears in fact do exist or could exist, you can't really take any inspired action towards them to really fix them or do anything about it. We have to have this awareness first. That's where the growth is going to come from. And then we're going to learn to actually resolve them. That's the bottom line. Again, we're going to go into some of the foundations behind fear, why they exist, things like that. So this is an extremely important lesson to go along. What you'll first find out is that fear is an emotion. And it's a specific emotion. It's a reaction to a threat. We've all been designed in with this mechanism. Now, we've been designed in for our own good, quite frankly. What fear typically triggers is one of 3 situations. Many people think it's only 2, but there's actually 3. Fight, flight, or freeze. Well, fight is fairly obvious. All of a sudden we get afraid of something and we bow up, the adrenaline goes, and we get ready to fight our way out of the situation. Or that adrenaline kind of gets us going and says, get out of this situation. Flight, get out of here. So we either bow up or we run like crazy. But the third one is really the tough one, quite frankly, and that's freeze. That's when fear just totally puts you into a place where you just lock up. You don't take action. You don't do anything. You don't fight. You don't flight. You don't do anything. You're just stuck. And with what's been going on in our economy over the last couple of years, there's a lot of freeze going on. People just aren't taking action because they're just so stuck. One of my coaching clients asked me not long ago, Scott, I'm just stuck. What do I do? Well, the answer is really simple, and it's actually fairly obvious. Move. And they said, what, are you talking about move? I said, yeah, move. The opposite of stuck is move. If you want to get going and you want to change where you are, freeze doesn't work. Fight doesn't necessarily work. Flight doesn't necessarily work. But for sure, freeze doesn't. Stuck doesn't. I mean, when you're stuck, you're stuck. Then there's no action. There's no possibility for feedback. There's nothing going on. Ultimately, normal fear makes us safe. That's what we've all been designed in with. God has designed us each individually. Your higher source has built you with a power to protect you called fear. It's a sensation. It's intuition. It's a combination of all those things. When they say the hair stands up on the back of your neck, well, that's a designed-in response to call your awareness to a situation. Now, it's not fear that's the issue. It's irrational fear that's the issue. It's what really stunts your growth or your life. We're all going to be up against some things that kind of bring up fear. Fear of heights, fear of falling, fear of speaking in public. But that it's not the fear. You know, I still to this day, I get butterflies before I go on stage. Now, I've done it thousands of times, and yet you still get the butterflies. But what it is now is an excited anticipation as opposed to a fear. They say one of the greatest fears of anything is speaking in public. See, that's an irrational feeling from the standpoint of if you truly have a message that can serve your audience, you've been invited to share that message. So don't let that irrational fear really stunt your growth. Now, in a recent study, or as I did research for this section, I actually found 530 different phobias or fears listed in this article. 530. I mean, I couldn't imagine there would ever be that many. And some of the things that people are afraid of, their phobias, is phenomenal. You know, for the vast majority of people, they would never think of that. But for certain people, it's very real to them. I'm not judging or discounting that by any stretch of the imagination. Again, normal fear keeps us safe. It's the irrational version of that really takes over that becomes the problem. Franklin Delano Roosevelt said it in his first inauguration back in 1933. He said, "The only thing we have to fear is fear itself. Nameless, unreasoning, unjustified terror, which paralyzes needed efforts to convert retreat into advance. The only thing we have to fear is fear itself." And again, he named it nameless, unreasoning, unjustified terror, which paralyzes needed efforts. That's that irrational level of fear. This is way back from 1933. We want to look at these things. The number one enemy in any presentation is fear. Because again, we talk about a dog or an animal being able to sense fear. Well, so can a prospect, so can a customer. It'll kill the deal because you've got to come from a place of confidence, of support. People want to do business with those they know, like, and trust, and they want to trust in your expertise. If you're afraid of the presentation, it's hard to trust in you. You must create a mutually beneficial purchase environment. All these lessons are all designed around the same thing. Create an environment for them to take action on what it is you have to offer. Well, you've got to create that environment. You overcome this fear by solid product knowledge and professional presentation skills. That's why I'm so excited about you investing in yourself in this Lessons on Demand program. You're doing those things. You're learning those solid professional presentation skills, how to handle yourself. I'm so excited for you in that vein. So as we start to look at understanding fear, fear is a major barrier to people taking action and changing their lives. You know, think you can, think you can't, you're right. The think you can't is victim language. That's part of that fear creeping in. Right now, a lot of people are up against the wall, and it's been a tough economy. Guess what? It's been a tough economy for a lot of people. A lot of people are successful right now, so you can be successful. What's the definition of fear? Well, I've heard it put a lot of different ways, but one that I really like is fantasized experience appearing real. That's right. It's a fantasized experience. It's not a real experience. It's what you think might happen. Until something happens, it's not worth focusing on. That's why worry is such a wasted emotion. If you sit and worry about something happening and it doesn't happen, you've wasted all this time being non-constructive. And if it does happen, your worry didn't stop it. The point is better to use that time to create systems to, in fact, address issues positively or negatively. Things are going to happen in life. You know, stuff happens, but so does grace. So now let's get into these fears. The first one is a fear. These are the customer fears now. The fear of what they don't know. It's fear of the unknown. Now this is actually the most common fear. So you're this sales professional presenting what you have. You know your product inside and out. understand that in fact your prospect or your customer doesn't know it inside and out. And just the fact that they don't know it makes them a little bit skeptical and a little bit fearful along the way. They don't know enough to make a decision, and that's really the problem. So their fear is what they don't know. They want to have more information, and especially when we get into certain personality types like the beaver, the real analyticals, man, they want to have all the information so that they feel comfortable about this. This is where you ultimately make the difference. You and your organization, your product, your service reputation are all the next parts of that. So in other words, they buy you first. They've got to feel comfortable with you. They now know you. Remember, people do business with those they know, like, and trust. Then they've got to feel comfortable with your organization, the product, your reputation, your service. That all builds into them now knowing, and they can now start to take action. Remember, a satisfied customer tells 3 people. A dissatisfied tells 11. Now, in this day and age, it's far more than 11. So we have to get them to know us, like us, and trust us. This is how we get them out of this particular fear. The second fear is about making expensive mistakes. The fear of making an expensive mistake. Why? Because they've probably done it before. And they've probably had somebody remind them of that. In other words, they've, with their best information and their best interest in mind, in that of the family or the business, somebody has made an investment in something that they really thought would pay off in a certain way. And in turn, it does not. And it's been a fairly costly or expensive investment. Well, because the last one didn't work out, they now get gun-shy about yours working out. It really doesn't have anything to do with you. It's an irrational fear. But it's a fear that because they spent a lot of money last time and it didn't work, now they've kind of tied to spending a lot of money doesn't work. Well, that's not necessarily true. We all know that to be true. So somebody sold them in the past. This is where more than likely they were manipulated into something. That's why I've been striving so hard to get you to understand that it's about creating an environment for them to buy as opposed to selling. Because if in fact you sell them, you may get the deal, but if something goes wrong, then this kind of fear gets set in going forward to that person. We don't want to do that. Stop selling them, start serving them, and educate them. That's your task, is to educate. Remember, education through communication without manipulation. This is how you get through this fear of making expensive mistakes. The fact is, if your product satisfies the need, it's your obligation, or I like the I word, invitation, to help them fight through the block that's been created in their mind. You have now been invited to make their life better because you've got a solution that can do that for them. But the only way that they're going to know that is to take advantage of your solution, and the only other way they're going to know about your solution is to help them through this irrational fear. Now, the next one is similar products. In other words, they've already bought something like what you offer in the past, or they've already committed to a philanthropy like yours in the past, or they've already done something like that. And it didn't work so well for them. You know, their statement is kind of like, well, I've tried something like this in the past. This is where I think you've got to really focus on TCS, and that's total customer satisfaction. You've got to make sure that your customer service and reputation is up and beyond reproach. You have to be the very best you can possibly be at making sure that your customers are satisfied up and beyond the call. We talk about under promise and over deliver. I had this conversation at the club this morning after working out with a CEO of a national, actually multinational company, and we were talking about something that they had just done. And he said, we want to make sure that in every situation we under promise and over deliver. And he said, we got some big promises out there. So this is where we focus our attention. Well, it's the same kind of thing. We don't want to get this kind of fear involved. Now, sometimes, if it's doable within your product category, within your offering, one of the ways to calm this particular fear is through a trial period. In other words, get to know us. Get to know us by using us. Be a product of the product. If you allow them to use the product for a period of time, they can now feel the comfort and confidence behind it. They can now understand what's available from that side. Bottom line is you have to earn their trust. And somebody else broke the trust, but you've got to earn their trust if you want them to become your customer. So it's an irrational fear. We get that. You've got to do what you can do. One of the ways of doing that is showing testimonials or using endorsers or people that they respect, the people who referred them to your business in the first place, people who know for a fact the quality of your organization and what you've done. These are all people worth showing for them. Now, the fourth fear is a funny one because it's a fear of what others might say if they take the action. And believe it or not, this is a pretty big fear. In other words, what will others think if I do this? Will they think that I'm a sucker, or will they think that I don't know what I'm doing? In other words, what they're doing is they're giving their power to someone else. Their peer group is more important to them than what they think themselves. This many times is a self-esteem issue. They haven't been congratulated in the past for making good choices or good decisions. So they're always a little, they kind of give their power over to somebody else. And their fear is what somebody else, might think about it. So as a professional, you need to satisfy their needs. You have the expertise to deliver the right solution. You have to make them very comfortable in this. In fact, if this is a big thing for them, you might even make them feel good about the wise decision they're making, and that, their friends are going to congratulate them on what a wise decision they've made. That's happened many times with the purchase of this product or by taking advantage of this offering from that side. Again, we have to calm that need. We have to calm that need for others' input on the decision they've made. Now, the fifth fear is the fear of owing money. And a very big fear these days because people have kind of tapped a lot of their reserves. It hasn't been a very chipper last couple of years. I mean, it just is it is what it is. So they don't want to owe too much. Understandable, but we have to help walk people through the process of really understanding. If they have a need, they will buy, but they'll usually wait for you to make a concession inside. So what they're really using the owing money fear to a lot of times is to try to leverage to get a better price or a better deal. If you're selling from a point of integrity, if you're selling from a point where there are no hip pocket deals, if you offer the best possibilities to all the people all the time, obviously concessions are not a possibility. So you have to, again, owing money is relative to it. They feel if they put out $1, maybe they're only getting $1 in return for it. One of the ways to help get through this is by developing more value in your offering. The fact of the matter is they don't want to owe money because they don't feel they're going to get the value over time. Well, if they're going to get $4 for $1 that they give out or that they owe, now they feel better about the value, so there's not much of a fear of owing the money. Offer the best quality, the best service, the best expertise, and find out which one is the most important. Now, many times it's said, we offer the best quality, best service, and best expertise. Which one would you like to leave out? Well, you really can't leave any of them out in this day and age. But what you can do is find out which one is the most important so you can provide more value in that. It helps you translate the value equation to them that much better. Fear number 6 is kind of the he said, she said story. Somebody could slam you or your profession or your products or your services that you represent. I train a lot in the chiropractic industries, and unfortunately there are many people who don't really understand the industry very well, and yet they still choose to comment on it in a negative light. Quite frankly, what we need is more people to understand the industry and share the wonders of what chiropractic has to offer. The point is, this gets into a he said, she said kind of thing. Somebody else has said something about something. It's not really informed. They don't really know. Doesn't keep them from saying it. Well, the fact is, you're going to now have to address those issues. You've got to calm that fear of what somebody else said. Bring them to the table to dispel this misinformation. You have to dispel the myths. You have to flat ask them what's holding them back. What do they know about this topic? What's their relationship to the information provider? If it's just something I heard casually, or it's something I read on the internet, what's the source of the information? What you have to be able to do is really get down to what's holding them back here, where they believe the source. See, they're believing some other source more than they're believing you in this case. And if you want to get rid of this fear, again, it's irrational, so you've got to address it straight up. We strive for total customer service. I need to know about this issue so I can handle it properly. In other words, that's the conversation you have with them. You need to find out the information that they know or they believe they know, so you can, in fact, answer it out better. Now, the seventh fear is an outright fear of the presenter. That could be you personally, or it could be your profession. In other words, you go into a certain profession, and people tend to talk about car dealers and the car salesman. You're a typical used car salesman. Do I think that that's an appropriate moniker? I don't think so at all. If there's any negativity tied to it, it doesn't mean that people don't have that interpretation. So this fear is a fear of the presenter itself. Some of you are a scary bunch to some. Just the fact, that's why as we talk about how we introduce people, as opposed to saying, I'm a salesman, say, I'm a solution provider. Because that's what you really are. I'm an educator. I help you understand the benefits. In other words, just your title alone, stop introducing yourself with your title, because your title could be scary to some. They've been manipulated and not educated in the past, and understand you're the quality person that educates. Not all presenters wear plaid. That's the bottom line. The fact is, they all used to wear the plaid sport coat, and that's how you could identify them. Well, that's not really true. The fact of the matter is, there's a ton of people, you included. That's why you've invested in yourself in this program, to make sure that you're the best you can possibly be at presenting quality solutions to your prospects. Educate them on the benefits of what you have to offer, and then decide if it's a fit. Now, you should probably decide that in advance of all the education, but sometimes it happens in the other order. What we want to make sure is that they feel that you are a quality resource to them, not the other way around. You need to be the best that you can be. This has to be about care, not scare. In other words, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. This has to be about carrying people into a decision, not scaring people into a decision. It's really just that simple. You want to be known as their resource, their go-to person. You can't do that if they're afraid of you. And then the last fear for prospects is called liar, liar. And many people have been outright lied to. They've been told this product will do this or do that. It's been oversold and ultimately underdelivered. They've flat been lied to. Well, lying to people doesn't work. It will come back to haunt you. There's no doubt about it. There's never a good reason to lie. Be in integrity. Integrity is wholeness. It's the integer one. Bottom line, if you lie to somebody, it will come back to bite you. There is no doubt about it. In today's information society, anything and everything seems to be searchable. So you cannot lie to people. You have to tell them the truth. It will come back to bite you. Tell the truth and gain their respect. That's what it's all about. You have to establish proper expectations. This is where we come back into under promise, over deliver. It's really not that difficult from that side. I've already referred to integrity or wholeness. Integrity comes from the word integer, wholeness, one. You've got to be in integrity. Your word has got to be your bond. Your handshake has to mean something. I understand in this day and age we look far too often for contracts and all that kind of stuff. You know, if your handshake isn't worth anything, you really got a problem. It's something you should consider going forward. So those are the 8 fears for the customer. Those are customer issues. Your knowledge and understandings of these issues and these fears help handle these issues. Now, here's the thing, that fears number 9, 10, and 11 could be yours. So that's what we want to examine. And quite frankly, I'm going to spend even more time on each one of these because I want to identify it for you, but I also want to share with you the answers or the process to help you get through these fears, because that's what this series is all about. It's about helping you become better going forward. Now, fear of rejection is simply a state of being over-dependent. It's a state where you're giving others your power. You want to hear their approval or recognition or affirmation. It's others' input to you becomes more important to you, and how you feel good about that in comparison to you. You know, it's their approval, recognition, and affirmation of others in order to feel good about themselves, as opposed to feeling good about yourself, as opposed to doing this any other way. So you've got to be comfortable and confident in what you do and your capabilities to go forward from that side. Again, it's a self-censoring attitude that ultimately inhibits your creativity and your productivity and imagination in your approach. See, if you feel rejected, you're going to tend to pull back inside of you. Well, that's what inhibits your true ability success. In essence, you create your own failure because you're now pulling back. You're not using your productivity or imagination or any of those good capabilities. Fear of rejection can become the driving force behind people being authentic human beings. In other words, you don't want to be the true you out to people because, in fact, you feel if you're going to be the true you, they might not accept you and you may be rejected. Well, rejection only exists in one place, within you. They lose their own identity in the process. In other words, if you don't become who you are, you lose your identity. And what we want you to do is be you. Remember, one of the other lessons we talked about, if you truly want to sell from the heart, you have to be authentic. You have to be the authentic you. You can't do that any other way. We've discussed this along the way, that the fear of rejection is one of those irrational fears, that others will not accept you for who you are, or what you believe, or how you act. Well, you know that's not the truth because you have many friends, you have many people around you, you have many acquaintances, you've touched many lives along the way. It's a persuasive motivator for caution in behavior and interactions with others. Again, it tends to pull you back if you've got this fear. It's this irrational fear that doesn't allow you to be who you really are or do what you can really do. Unfortunately, most of it's a state of mind. It's your belief in what's going on. And that makes you incapable of doing or saying anything for fear of what you deem other people's rejection or lack of acceptance or a disapproval. Now, I'm not saying be cocky and arrogant and don't consider other people's feelings. That's not what I'm saying here. It's the too much caring about what other people say and too much of all that. I want you to consider their feelings, but they need to consider your feelings as well. Understand there's a give and take here. So you got to watch your state of mind as far as this goes. Ultimately, the problem is this becomes very energy robbing, and it leads to self-immobilization, self-defeating, or even self-destructure behavior. In other words, you won't go take the risk that, if you really think about it, isn't much of a risk at all. If you won't say hi to people because at one time somebody kind of barked at you, you've now limited the possibility of a wonderful interaction with somebody because of something else that has happened along the way. It's really a shame when something like that happens because you lose the possibilities. It's ultimately the act of giving others more power than you're willing to give yourself. Stop giving away your power. Fear of rejection is the abdiction of power and control over your own life. That's why it's such an irrational fear. It's giving anybody else far more power. I appreciate your opinion. I choose not to happen to agree with it. That's how you answer it. It's not, appreciate the fact that they're willing to provide you input and really to do things for you. That's healthy. But it's when you succumb to it and you now get immobilized and you don't do anything about it that it becomes a problem. Rejection is only realized within one place: you. Rejection really doesn't exist. It's not what anybody ever says to you that's the biggest issue. It's what you say to you after they stop talking. It's not what anybody says to you that matters. It's what you say to yourself after they stop talking. If they say, you know what, I don't think he's really that good at that, or I don't really think you're that good at doing that, that's not the part that causes the issues. If you say to yourself, well, gosh, they don't really know that I am pretty good at this, that's one answer. Or you could say, wow, they're right. How'd they find that out? They really don't know that I'm very good. That's the one that's hazardous to you. It's not what they said. It's what you say to you after that. So rejection only happens within yourself. Eleanor Roosevelt said this many years ago. No one can make you feel inferior without your own consent. See, this comes down to knowing you, doing things for the right reasons at the right time, working to improve yourself. That's why you're such a magnificent human being. You're working on yourself to provide the solutions. That's why don't oversell. Don't tell people you can do things you can't do. You're setting yourself up for them making other comments from that side. That's why it's so important. And the real way to get out of this fear of rejection is confidence. You have to have confidence in your capabilities, in who you are, in your heart, why you're doing what you're doing, and all of that. Over time, people understand that. You know your capabilities, send out that energy, and that energy is what people will respond to. Let me give you a process to specifically deal with the fear of rejection. Step 1 is list the people whose rejection you fear. In other words, if there's some people that don't know you quite so well, in other words, write it down. List the people that you think could take shots at you going forward. Secondly, list the behavior patterns reflecting your fear. In other words, go ahead and document what behaviors you think they will respond to in a negative way. Create some alternative behavior patterns, some healthy and productive patterns that you can now, in their presence, you could enact as opposed to the ones that you have been taking. These are the ones that become the alternative. Then list the benefits of using the alternative behaviors. Again, really understand the why. You kind of develop the what. Now you're developing the why behind these behaviors from that side. What's stopping you from adopting the alternative behavior? The fact is you've been doing something a certain way, hasn't worked exactly very well. You've now identified another potential way of doing it. So the question is, what's stopping you from using that alternative behavior? And in fact, if there's nothing stopping you, implement the alternative behavior patterns. You now have a new way. This is kind of on course, off course. You got off course. There's a new course available to you. Get on the new course. See what happens. This will help you bust out of the fear of rejection. Now, the next fear is the fear of failure and fear of making mistakes or losing approval. That's what really fear of failure is. It's like it kind of immobilizes you because, gosh, if I do this, I could make a mistake. Many times it's tied to the fear of rejection. In other words, you think that if you fail, you will then be rejected. So it's kind of a compounding kind of fear. The fact is, we just learned that the fear of rejection doesn't exist. If you give it your all, you give it your all. And if it doesn't work exactly the way you'd like it to work, then next time do something else. And guess what? Give it your all again. So many times fear of failure is is tied to fear of rejection. It becomes self-limiting. You don't want to go out on a limb. You don't want to try things because, in fact, if I don't try, I can't fail. That's why people get immobilized. See, they don't take action because if they take action, something's going to happen. That's the only way you get feedback. And so they don't do anything. If you're wondering why people aren't taking action in your organization, it's because if they take action, there's going to be feedback to it. That's why people don't participate in meetings. Because, in fact, if they make a suggestion, now that suggestion is open to judgment. It's open to, well, was that a good suggestion or not? Or did they expose themselves in a way that they would not like to? Here's the bottom line, though, of fear of failure, is it really is wasted potential to serve humanity. You've been born with your individual greatness. If you don't act and get that greatness out, you've got an issue. Why? Because you could have served humanity. You chose not to because, well, what's somebody going to think or what's somebody going to say? My latest book is an example of taking action, even though when I first got the call to write it, it was like, my own question was, what right do I have to write this book? But what I realized is the right I had was I was being called to write the book. To this point, I don't know what the result of the book will be, but I know that it'll be perfect. It'll be exactly what it's supposed to be. But if I didn't put that out into the marketplace, there's no way that I could serve humanity or grow ministry like the book is designed to do or do anything like that. So again, I took that risk. We'll see what happens out of it. I don't know exactly what will, but here's the only thing I know. There is no failure with it. I put it out. I've caused some conversation already. So again, if you don't do that, you've got a problem. See, God's gift to us is our talents. Our gift in return is using them to their fullest. It's going out and doing some things. Like I said, the goal wasn't to set out to make this this book for ministry, was not to make it a bestseller. It was to make it a tool that people could grow their ministry with, that we could affect more lives with positively. Now, if the byproduct at some time is it becomes a bestseller because of that, all right, we did something great. That's cool. That wasn't the desire. The desire was to serve. God's gift to us is our talents. Our gift back to God is using those talents to serve the kingdom and more people. That's our opportunity. No matter who you are, what your faith is, understand where this is coming from. You have tremendous talent. Put it into use. Let's get out of fear of failure and letting that stop you. The question is, under failures, who sets the rules as to what that failure is? So don't compare yourself and who's better than or worse than or anything like this. I was talking to a good friend of mine this morning. He was just appeared on the Dr. Phil show. Just wrote a new book. His book is going to go nuts because of it. You know what? He created a tremendous lesson. Here's the point. That's what he was called to do. He's making the effect at this time that's perfect within the plan. If that's what's supposed to happen for me at some time, that will happen. And if it's not, that won't happen. Do you understand? It's not about comparing one person to another or one action to another. That's where we get stuck in fear of failure because we make these comparisons. And ultimately what happens is your heart won't let you fail. You've got to believe in what's going on. Now there's so many great examples of this and people trying to twist things into failure. In other words, they're trying to categorize them as failure. One of those being Edison and the light bulb. When Edison was inventing the light bulb, it took him over 14,000 steps to accomplish the end result, the light bulb. Now, many times he was asked, was it a failure? And he said, quite contrary. It was simply a 14,000 step process. So again, how do we look at our fear of failure? How do we look at the definition of failure? Have you failed just because it hasn't worked the first time or the second time or the third time? No, that's where your stick-to-itiveness comes in. That's where perseverance has to come in. As Buckminster Fuller said, you can't learn less. Every step that Edison took in creating the light bulb got him closer to the end result. He was off course far more than he was on course, but the point is he knew the course he wanted to establish. He knew where he wanted to go, and he stuck to it. There was no failure there, so there could be no fear of failure. So how do you get out of fear of failure? Well, let's get into it. The first is step one, do something. You've got to take some action. You've got to get in movement. The only way to get feedback is to do that. Number two, understand you're going to need to be persistent. You're going to have to persevere. You're going to have to fight through some things. It's just all part of it. Understand that it's not personal. You have great capability. You have great ability and greatness within you. You're tremendously brilliant. Let that brilliance show. Understand it's not personal. Modify your approach. You got to get out there and change something, do something differently than the way it's been done. Obviously, if what you were doing would work, it would work. It's just the way it is. So now try doing something else, and don't beat yourself up about it. All you can do is keep after it. You've been put on this planet to accomplish some great things, and be gentle on yourself. Don't be so hard on yourself. The fact of the matter is, if you're giving it your all and you're doing what you can do and you're reaching out every day, it's going to work. Sometimes it just takes a little longer than you think. It's just all part of it. And understand that all of it's a learning experience. Your first day is your worst day. It'll never be like this again. Why? Because you now have more information to draw on. You now have greater capability and greater opportunity going forward. And at the very least, have you been exposed to something new? Again, look at this with a little childlike wonder, a little curiosity, and understand, maybe it opened your eyes to something, so maybe it's actually a blessing in disguise. Maybe this so-called failure isn't so much of a failure as a redirection or something that's exposed you to something new, very valuable in your future. And the other side is step number 8, fail forward fast. Go ahead and make it some fun. If you're going to fail, then do it faster and do it in the right direction. Just keep on going after it. Now, don't do anything silly. Don't do anything irrational. Don't do anything overly expensive that would put you into some kind of other situation. But fail forward fast. Keep on trying things. The best that you can do. It kind of comes back to that lesson where we got $250 every time we sold something, and it took 10 attempts to sell it in order to do it, as opposed to 9 failures and 1 success. Make them all 10 $25 successes that got you the $250. Fail forward fast. Just keep on taking the action and keep on going from that side. And the 11th fear is fear of success. Fear of what? Are you kidding me? Fear of success? What are you talking about? Accomplish all you desire, but you still aren't happy, content, or satisfied once you reach the goal. Congratulate yourself. Stop being so hard on yourself. You've accomplished everything you've wanted to get to this stage. Now there's more stages. There's more goals. There's more things you can do. That's true. But stop and smell the roses. Again, fear of success comes from the fact that you sit there and you don't give yourself enough credit for what you've already accomplished. Like I said, you've reached your goal and you're tough on yourself. Another part of fear of success comes from the belief that you're undeserving of all the good things and the recognition that come your way as a result of the accomplishments and successes. In other words, you don't feel worthy of the accolades and the variety of things that are coming to you. So, for whatever reason, and there's lots of ways of addressing this. And if you have any of these issues, I have some great sources that work very well on getting rid of these fears, especially this one, fear of success. Understand you are deserving. You've done a lot of work. Everything that's gone into your success, you've done. You've had a hand in. So understand that along the way. Once again, stop being so hard on yourself. Fear of success is really the fear of accomplishment and being recognized and honored. So get over yourself. Now, it doesn't mean become arrogant about it or any of that. Just become confident. Let it soak in. Let somebody give you a standing ovation. Just really accept it. Be warm about it. Love on it. Feel that feeling as it comes in. Accept the honors. Fear of success comes from the lack of belief in your own ability to sustain your progress and the accomplishments you have achieved in your life. In other words, another part of fear of success is, okay, so maybe you aren't so hard on yourself. You say, wow, it's really great. I'm up here on the mountain. Holy cow, now I got to stay on top of the mountain. It's more of that kind of feeling, lack of belief. But this is where if you have the comfort and confidence that in fact everything is happening and the world is conspiring for your good and everything is happening for your good, if you've been at the top and you get knocked off the top, guess what? You can be back at the top again. It doesn't matter whether that's you, me, whomever it is. We all have that ability. Fear of your accomplishments can self-destruct at any time. Wow, I just don't know that I can hold this here. Get over it. You know what? You weren't always there. Life was pretty good while it wasn't there. You've now gotten a new level. If it self-destructs, as long as you have been judicious about your newfound success and you've been a good steward of the rewards of that success, that won't be a problem. If not, maybe it's a learning lesson for next time around. No matter how much you're able to achieve, it'll never be enough to sustain the success, to stay in that place. Well, you know what? The fact of the matter is, life is about the journey. It's not a destination. It's about going up and down. It's about things changing. And again, fear of success is one of those irrational fears when it comes to that. It's also a belief that there are others out there who will be better than you, who will replace or displace you if you do not maintain your performance record. It's like, oh my God, somebody, they might promote somebody ahead of me. Guess what? If they do that, they do that. It's all part of the grand plan. This is where you've got to take comfort in higher source. I've always said to all my people, my desire is to hire the very best people I possibly can and do everything I can to prepare you to replace me. Now, at the same time, I will assure you I'm not going to sit on my laurels and not continue to get better. So you're going to have to continue to chase that and get better as well. Now, if somebody is perceived to be better at something than I am, God bless them. Go for it. Then that's the way it is. Now, I get that that's kind of a hard concept to accept at some time, but I've said that recently with one of the companies that I speak for. I said, number one, I'm not looking to displace anybody per se, and number two, if there's somebody better out there for you, then use them. I know that I will give you everything I got 100% of the time I'm out there. That's all I'm in control of. The rest is outside your control, so stop creating situations that are outside your control. It's also a belief that success is an end in itself, yet that end is not enough to sustain your interest or your commitment. This is one of those situations where all of a sudden it's like, okay, I've reached the peak, and that's it? That's all this is about? Wow. Maybe it's not that big a deal. It really doesn't take that much for me to stay up here. Maybe I won't stay in that good a shape, or I won't do this, or I won't do that. Well, that's kind of silly. Take it, enjoy it, revel in it, and maybe you go find some other thing that now becomes of greater interest. See, the understanding is that we all strive to grow. You're either growing and green or you're ripe and rotten. Well, keep on growing. Be green. Keep on going after new things. It's sometimes the fear that once you've achieved your goals and worked diligently for it, the motivation will continue to fade. In other words, it just won't be as exciting. Well, you know what? That's a real possibility. And if it's not so exciting, then either reinvigorate within what you're doing to keep yourself excited, or go find something else. There's a lot of different ways you can use that. It's also the fear that you might find no happiness in your accomplishments and that you will be perpetually dissatisfied in life. Now, that's the one that's really irrational, because I can assure you, and I've had this conversation as of late, when I went into the speaking business and the training business, and I've spoken on some of the greatest and most rewarding stages in the world, at the same time, you all say, is this what this is really about? And then you modify and you find what it is really about. Now, I'm very blessed to be back on many of those stages. But it's because I want to be there again, as opposed to, well, I made it, so now I'm here, what's next? And you start to reinvigorate yourself as to why you want to be there. Because I want to serve more people. And the bigger the stage, the more I can serve. It's not because I necessarily want to be on the biggest stages. That's not the desire. The desire is to provide the most service to the most people, and it now gives you that outlet. Again, the key is quality of life. Understand everything we're doing here is to help you and everybody else create the greatest quality of life going forward. Now, how do we get there? One of the things I suggest is create a success page. That's listing your successes in the first third of your life, the second third of your life, and the third third of your life. Really look back and do an audit on all the successes that you've had throughout your lifetime. And maybe take and do the top 3 or top 5 successes by the time you are whatever. I'm just about to turn 54, so if I were to do this, let's take, say, the first 18 years of my life, and then the second 18 years of my life, and then the third 18 years of my life, and really look at the various successes. Well, if I think back just very quickly, I was fortunate in the first 18 years of my life that, gosh, I was a 5-sport athlete in high school, in Cub Scouts. We won the Cub Scout tournaments year after year. We beat a team 72-0. That hardly seems right. We did a variety of different things. I look at a variety of different accomplishments by the time I was 18. From 18 to 36, my goodness, I was able to play college football at the University of Iowa, a great accomplishment for Coach Hayden Fry, and worked for a Manor Refrigeration coming out of school. I started selling life insurance when I was at age 18, right around that time. 2 great kids were born during that period. Things like that, just some amazing different things. And then I look at the third third of my life. I left corporate America. I left kind of the consulting and went into the speaking business. I've been able to share the stage with some of the world's greatest speakers. I've got a tremendous marriage with my beautiful wife, Peggy, of almost 17 years now. I've got amazing kids that have grown into just wonderful stewards of this planet. So you can start to list the very successes that you had along the way. List those successes, and then also list the successes to be achieved in the next 5 years. Kind of get a gauge for what's going to go on from this point forward from that side. I think that'll help you a lot. Really, this is a journal exercise. Really create a journal and start to list. I would go back and list, quite frankly, 100 successes that you've had in your life, because you've all had that many. And it's quite frankly one of the reasons I keep my my gratitude box, kind of my memory box. It's where I keep cards that people send that say, hey, you really made a difference in my life. So any of those days that you're ever a little down, you can go back to this and go, wow, I did make a difference. We all go through it. I don't care who you are. I've talked with the greatest speakers and the greatest trainers in the world. They've all had their down periods too. Every one of us does that. Now, the other thing that I would do real quickly is I would work on your language and get away from victim language into more accountable language. Victim language is the I can't. Things, it's all the stuff that people are against you. Or get rid of the ED words. I feel scared. As opposed to an accountability, I'm scaring myself by what I'm imagining here. Or I feel trapped, to I'm trapping myself by inaction and doing these different things. Or I feel depressed, to I'm depressing myself by not fully expressing my anger or my sadness about something. In other words, get rid of the victim language, become the victor. You have that opportunity. This is one of the ways of doing it. When we talk about fear of success, understand that growth equals awareness plus inspired action. By definition, you have to make the uncomfortable comfortable. I said this in a training the other day. People say, well, I'm stuck in my comfort zone, and I don't want to become discomfortable or uncomfortable. I'm stuck in my comfort zone and I don't want to become uncomfortable. Then I ask them how they're doing, how their finances are working, what's going on with them. And they say, well, they're terrible. I said, it seems to me like you're not in your comfort zone, you're in your uncomfort zone right now. If you really want to get out of your uncomfort zone, you got to take the opportunity to go the other way. But again, it's reframing how we look at some things along the way. We all share infinite talents. You've got tremendous talents within you. You need to let them get out. You are the world's best. You're the world's best at a lot of different things, but there's one thing specifically you're the world's best at. Being the world's best you. There is no other you. Nobody else can have the impact that you can provide other than you. So you have to get back in there, re-engage, embrace your success, and contribute. You've been put on this planet to make a difference. So go do it, whatever that is. Like I said in another training, a 7-year-old can mentor a 5-year-old. You always know something, one more thing, than somebody else, and they need to know it. You can make a difference. So if we do a quick review, we've looked at fear. We've looked at 11 fears, 11 phobias out of 560. You've learned to recognize the fears, and hopefully you've now learned to resolve them. I told you there was a lot of content in this. Hopefully you've taken a ton of notes, and you're going to go back and really make a difference with this in your life. We're going to finish it up with Zig's quote. You can have anything in life you want when you help enough other people get what they want. You know, this is my prayer for you, that you truly adopt this, you take this mindset, and you go forward from this point. You know, it's been an honor to be able to present this information to you to hear today. The 11 deadly fears are so important to know about and so important to know how to handle. As with every lesson, if you need more information, please visit www.scottschilling.com. Plenty of information there. Again, it's been an honor to be able to present this information with you. My name is Scott Schilling. If I can ever be of service to you, please let me know. Until we talk next time, continue to do the great things you're out there doing. Take care.